won the World Cup. It is the fourth time they've done.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Women's Cricket Chat, and I'm absolutely buzzing to say that today we are joined by South African legend and part of my new FairBreak family, Mignon du Preez. Welcome to the podcast, and please tell me I have pronounced it right, because you hear so many pronunciations: du Preez, du Preez, du Preez. Can we just go for Van der Merwe? Just take the married name. Give us all the problems.
Totally won't mind if you go for Van der Merwe, but even it's actually Van der Merwe is really English. Like in South Africa, it's actually Van der Merwe. So you try that one with all the R's.
Oh yeah, okay, right, okay. I take it back.
So then you go back to du Preez, and it's perfect just without the Z. I know a lot of people, although it's spelled with a Z, you don't say the Z. So just Mignon du Preez.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, I actually saw you, a week ago now? We were out at FairBreak. So Alex and Mignon joined up together for an episode of Women's Cricket Chat. It's been a long time in the making to get this to come together, but thank you so much for joining us today. And I guess if we just kick things off, as we like to, sort of, how did you first get into cricket?
Well, I've actually started a lot of my stories in my cricket career was by accident. So the same goes for when I started playing cricket. So I was about 4 years old, and my brother was playing mini cricket, and my dad was the coach of his team. And as a little sister, I always went with to support, and I made sure that I had the right attire on. So I had a little mini cricket T-shirt and white shorts, and I was always ready to go. And on one of the days, one of my brother's teammates couldn't get to the game in time. And Dad said, listen, we need an extra player. Would you like to help out? And long story short, at the end of the day, I was the best batter of the day. And that's where the love started for cricket.
I guess that just sort of started how you mean to go on, really. Was it from there that you knew you wanted to be a batter then?
Yeah, probably. I think best batter of the day means that I probably had a little bit of ball skill. The bowling side, I did take up wicket keeping early in my career because I did fielding wise. I like to throw myself around in the field, so I did do wicket keeping in primary school. Although ESPN Quick Info to this day says I'm a wicket keeper, I've been selected in teams as a backup wicket keeper, and I had to tell them, listen, just so you know, I haven't kept since primary school. So I basically just started playing cricket as a 4-year-old. Played cricket with boys mainly up until probably the age of 13 when I went to high school. That was kind of the time where my parents felt that the way the boys are playing and being just about it, they start bowling a lot quicker than the girls, and they were scared that I might get injured. So fortunately, the high school I went to, Swartkop High School, had a girls cricket team, and I could then play with the girls, and I made my debut for South Africa in my matric year in 2007.
Yeah, and just on that, I think you made your debut for South Africa at the age of 17, but 5 years earlier, I believe, from what I read, at the age of 12, you scored a double century, scoring 258. Like, that is absolutely mammoth. That's mammoth to do that just in everyday life, but to do that at 12 years old must have been, I don't know, I don't even have the words to describe it. So what was going through your head during that innings?
Yeah, as I mentioned before with the mini cricket and started by accident, I wasn't actually meant to play in that game. So the night before the game, got a call up to say, listen, we need another player for tomorrow. We want short. So it was actually a domestic provincial game in South Africa where Gauteng North, that's the team that I played for, and that's a province. So we now known as Northerns, and for the men's team, that's usually the Titans. That's where they play. And we played against Gauteng. And yeah, I actually just remember waking up in the morning feeling like, today I wanted to bat, and it just seemed like I eventually started seeing the ball like a watermelon, and 16 sixes and 28 fours later, I was 258 not out. At that time, it was like an unofficial world record for that age. But yeah, that was quite special. I think that is kind of started as a 4-year-old, then had that game, and then realized like, wow, this might actually be a career path. And I think that's kind of where the penny dropped, that cricket might be the sport for me going forward, and where I can actually play for my country one day.
And I actually think that's probably more sixes and fours than a lot of people have hit in their entire lives playing?
Just in all fairness, it was also probably the most I've hit in my life. After that, in international cricket, only recent times, I think, I started hitting sixes a bit more. But in the beginning of my career, there's quite a funny stat. I think at the Kia Super League the one year, I had more sixes in that one Kia Super League playing for Loughborough Lightning than I hit in my whole international career. So yeah, I only found the boundary hitting options a little bit later in the career, but at least rather late than never.
This is true. And so it was only 5 years after that monumental mammoth innings that you made your South Africa debut. Can you remember what it was like? Because I sent you a picture earlier of little young Mignon making her debut with the braces, and you do look very young. What was it like making your debut?
As I mentioned, all the story starts with the funny fact that by accident. So initially, I got invited to be part of the South African environment or come to my first camp during that. Actually, the year before, in 2006, I got invited to the first camp and got pretty excited because I passed all the fitness tests and I actually felt like, wow, this is my time to shine. So I'm going to hopefully make the team. And we had a tour against Pakistan in November. And long story short, I didn't get selected for the team. So I was quite disappointed and thought, I'm not sure what more I have to do, but inspired me to keep going. And the tour actually got postponed to the next year, January. I can't remember what the reason was, but got postponed to January. And early in January, I got a call from the head coach to say that one of the players, actually a player that you're very familiar with, Chandra Fritz, dove into the swimming pool during the December holidays and she broke her neck. And fortunately, just so that I can say it, she's fine. She kept playing afterwards, all in all. But that kind of was up. So player got injured, got a call up, and I then made my debut for South Africa in my matric year in 2007 against Pakistan. And initially started carrying the drinks like most of the girls do. But fortunately, there was a game or two later, and I played my first game, and I managed to score a 50 in the debut tour. And that kind of, ever since then, for over 100 games after that, I managed to be in the starting 11.
And obviously, you also made your T20 debut in 2007. And being so young, 17 or so, did you ever feel a sense of pressure being so young to sort of perform from the get-go on the international stage?
Well, I must say it was quite a different era then. It wasn't as professional as it is now. So I do think probably the girls coming into the setup young now, there's a lot more pressure because it's a professional environment. Where when we played, I remember my first year, we basically had one tour a year where you had 3 ODIs or a couple of T20s, and that was it. And at that time, it was basically just, I remember the ICC had a guideline that your women's team had to play a certain amount of games for your men's team to play on the international stage. So we basically just ticked that box. So we just played as many games as needed. So it was very, very unprofessional. We all just played for the love of the game. So not a lot of pressure back then. I think I just enjoyed it. I feel as a youngster, you actually probably think a lot less. So you actually, at that time, I wasn't sure who I'm playing against. It was just see ball, hit ball, where I feel like as we got older and more professional, it got a lot more technical and you had to do a lot more studying of the game and planning and preparation. But on that time when I started, it was still quite casual and it was a bit more, we had a couple of training sessions and then we went to play. So fortunately, didn't feel as much pressure back then, but it also kind of helped that I did have a good score early on to just make sure that I could make that starting 11 going forward.
And so you obviously made that debut so young, went on to play 154 ODIs, 114 T20s and a test match. What do you think 17-year-old Mignon would say if you went to her now, this is how many games you're going to play internationally and you're going to captain your side?
She'd probably just go, wow. Yeah, I think that was always, it was something you, at that time, it wasn't a viable career option. So when I started playing, it was purely for the love of the game. Yes, there was a few perks. We got to travel and I got my first trip internationally in my matric year. We went to the Netherlands. So that was quite special. So, you know, that was, but at that time it was basically, it's going to give me opportunity to travel and I can play for my country. But yeah, it was, if you think how it progressed and where we are now, and that it's currently a viable career option globally. It's getting bigger and better by the day. And there's just not even just from a playing point of view, but just all the opportunities, whether it's coaching, commentary, mentoring, ambassador. There's just so much stuff happening in the women's space. And that's pretty special that I'm still involved in this era. Although I feel I might be a couple of years just born too early, because I feel if I could play another 4 or 5 years, things are now at a really exciting phase globally. And it would have been awesome to still continue to be part of it.
Yeah, and you talk about how it's changed throughout the time. What's it been like to witness that development in the women's game, and especially the professionalization of the game in South Africa and across the world?
It's really special because it's something we've worked really hard for. We fought hard for getting things in place. And when I started, I always said, I want to be part of the change I want to see in women's cricket, and I want to leave it better. So when I walk away, I wanted it to be in a better place. And I think luckily where we are today, that is something I can walk away knowing that we've made major strides. Yes, we might not be where we want to be yet in terms of international cricket and the structures on a domestic level and financially, but there's a lot of positives that how far we've come, and that it is currently a viable career option. The girls are playing on television, so there's now young girls that see these girls on TV and they can actually inspire them to take up cricket, where before, when we started playing, unfortunately there wasn't a lot of female role models playing cricket, so we all had to have male cricket heroes because that's who you saw on TV. And it's now nice to know that if you ask a lot of the young girls, who's your favorite cricketer, there's a lot of names that's currently playing. Laura Wolford, Marizanne Cup, those girls' names are coming up quite often. So that's exciting. And not just for men's cricketers. You sometimes see how little boys get excited, or even men also, when they see these girls now, all of a sudden they are role models. And that's quite special. So to still witness it, I'm really thankful that I had a small part of the change, but it's also challenging at times, because obviously, like I mentioned, when we started, we kind of pitched and played, and as it progressed, there was a lot more responsibility, a lot more accountability, and at times it's ruthless. So earlier on, you could probably get away if you're not performing, nobody knew about it. Now it's on TV. If you're not performing, the whole world knows and they tell you about it. So
and then it gets clipped and put on social media, and then it gets seen over and over and over again.
Especially if you do something stupid, if you face plant, if a lot of those just becomes a gif and it gets played over.
At least your trousers have never fallen down. We all saw that. Was it Michael Vaughan? He slid in the field once and pulled his trousers down. So at least that's never happened to you. Yes.
On TV probably, but so it's amazing. It's exciting to see that the game is growing, and I think it's still just at the beginning. There's still a lot more that's going to change in the future. So excited to see what's coming.
But also, you must feel so happy to get the support from male allies, not just in cricket. I mean, the South African rugby union captain Siya Kolisi is a big advocate of not just women's cricket, of women's sport, and we all saw in the T20 World Cup final how he was just bursting with pride and enthusiasm. So it must feel so pleasing to have someone of such high caliber be invested in the women's game.
Yeah, they do. We've got the saying, and I think Nelson Mandela said it, that sports unites a nation, and that's exactly what it does. Like you mentioned, he came down, and he was so it was even for me. I didn't know him quite well before that, and I knew he's been in touch every now and again. Initially with Laura Wolford, they both Adidas athletes, so that was kind of the connection. But that's kind of where the seed fell, and he just got so excited. And to actually see that he was at the World Cup, and I think after the game he didn't have a voice left because he was the one shouting the loudest in the crowd, cheering. It was really special, and to also to spend some time with him and get to meet. And then, like you mentioned, it's not just for women's cricket. He's an advocate for women's sport in general, and he's been with the netball girls. There's a netball World Cup also in South Africa coming up. So just to see, and I mean, he's got a major network. So if he's excited about women's sport and speaks about it, he might just light the fire for a couple of other male sports people, or just other people that's excited about sport that maybe didn't know about women's cricket. And because he was there, they got an interest and they want to start following it. So it was really good. And I think it's good to see. And hopefully there's a lot more sporting heroes that would take hands with the women and appreciate their skill. And I think that's something that I've seen in recent times, that the men are also very appreciative. We don't always like it when there's a time where there's a lot of comparison, male and female cricketers. And I think women's cricket is a sport in its own right. And the men are also seeing that and valuing the skill. They're not comparing you. You don't have to be an AB de Villiers, but you can be an AB de Villiers in the women's game, you know, and you are unique and you're special. And I think that's fair. You can't really compete a female and a male. It's just, we are completely different. So it's just good that there's now so many female role models in their own right.
And we'll come back and touch on the World Cup again in a bit, but just coming back to you and your career. So when you were made captain and you then captained South Africa in all 3 formats, what was that like for you, and how proud were you to be able to make 100 as a captain in your one and only test match?
So again, a funny story. Captaining was also one of those. So I think the biggest thing is,
I think we're gonna have to change your name to Mignon du Accident, because everything seems to be.
I'm going to use it as coincidence, and there's a saying that coincidence, it's God's way of staying anonymous. So it was definitely just a higher power looking out for me, and there was favor on my career. But in any case, another long story short, captaining, we had a tour in Potchefstroom against England Academy. Unfortunately, the current captain got injured. They asked me to step up, and then there was a bit of a longer meeting, and the coach mentioned that it isn't just for the time being whilst she's injured. They actually want to look at it in the long term. And to be fair, like, I've always been a leader in school sports and stuff, but to be the leader of your country is really special. As a little girl, I don't think I've dreamed that big. I've always thought that I wanted to play cricket for South Africa, but to think of being the captain, and here's the opportunity. So I definitely wanted to grab it with both hands, but it felt like I was thrown into the deep end and I needed to learn to swim, because it was really a lot. I was quite young at that time. I felt I'm really good with people, but from a tactical point of view, I felt like I wasn't as good as I could be. So early phases of the career, I remember still having to have some crypt notes, who's going to bowl which overs, or have drinks time. The coach had to run on a few tips and tricks. But the thing is, the more you do it, that's the only way you can get better. And yeah, it was quite special to play in my one and only test match and to score a debut 100. I did, however, I do understand now why it is called test cricket, because you literally get tested in all facets of the game. And I remember scoring the 100, and then kind of innings 2, I just thought, I'm just going to keep going, you know, it's just going to kick off where I left off the first game. And it doesn't really happen quite like that. I remember getting out in the second innings to a shot today. It's an innovation in T20 cricket. It's not unusual, but in test match cricket in 2014, it was quite unusual to do a double step sweep. And I premeditated to Poonam Yadav and said, if she's going to toss the ball up, I'm going to use my feet. But if she throws it down leg, I want to sweep, because sweep against a leg spinner is a good option. And she ended up tossing it up down leg. So a double step swept, missed the ball and got stumped. So yeah, a funny story, but it was quite special. But yeah, unfortunately, we didn't come out on top in that test match, and there was an opportunity for us. We literally fell short with the follow-on within a couple of runs, and then we could have ended up to draw the test match. But to be fair, at that time we had no preparation, because we've never played a test match and we didn't know what to expect. So it was a great experience. Glad I got to do it at least once in my career, but I'm also glad that we don't have to do it as the men do quite frequently, back to back. I think one test match in a series will be okay, but I don't know if I can do 3 to 5 back to back.
And do you think there is space for more women's test matches? Obviously, we saw England, South Africa last summer in England, and typically the English summer decided it was going to piss it down with rain in Taunton. And only 4 days, perhaps there was another call for that 5th day, like we've got in England, Australia, and the Ashes this summer. Do you think there is that space for more women's test matches?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few girls that would love to play. I spoke to Susie Bates, and she mentioned that New Zealand never played in a test match. She's one of the cricketers that's well known, that has played cricket for a very long time, but hasn't played a test match. And I feel there's a lot of girls that, even if it's not on a regular basis, but at least if there can be one a year or one every series or second series, where you just get the exposure, because it does teach you a different side to the game. And I think mentally and from a patient's point of view and just skill wise, it's just completely different and unique. So I do hope that a lot of girls in the future will get an opportunity to run out in their whites. And I know how special it is in the men when you get your cap. And when people ask me about it, unfortunately for us, it wasn't a big deal because Test cricket in the women's space is not really the ultimate, probably because we just haven't done it enough. So I do hope that it might get to a point where the girls could really get excited to run out in their whites.
And with that test match last year, obviously we saw Marizanne Kapp doing Marizanne Kapp things, and just she came out, she scored 100, and it was as if she's been playing test match cricket on a weekly basis for her whole life. And then Tumi Sekakuni, rumor has it she's actually still batting. Because she just did exactly what you want someone to do. She just stuck in. But what was it like to be able to see Cappy do that in a test match and just show her absolute world-class ability in all formats of the game?
Yeah, look, we've all known, we've seen Cappy's masterclasses in T20 and in ODI cricket, and especially in finals of big tournaments. She's always the player that steps up in big occasions. So I didn't expect anything less from her because she is a big moment and big match player. But it's quite special. I know how hard she works, and she's really dedicated to it, training, a fitness, a skill. She prepares. I remember she would at times say, like, I wonder if she got any sleep, because usually she would bowl all her overs in her head the night before she actually goes and bowls. That's how good she prepares. And she has a plan for everybody that walks to the crease, left hand, right hand, nowhere fields. So I think she's a captain's dream because you don't really have to do much for her. I think she knows her game exactly, and she can execute more often than not. And she's really hard on herself. That's probably the only thing. There's times where I said, Kappy, just give yourself a little pat on the back and say, wow, you actually did really well. And you deserve a little bit. You can smile because what you've done is really special.
And you briefly mentioned the tour of the Netherlands. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but knowing you probably are. You shared a record partnership with, and apologies if I get this person's name wrong, Jamari Lottenberg, and it's apparently the 4th highest of all time. Were you aware of this at the time? And just talk us through that innings, because it's just amazing.
Not at the time, but I have seen the stats over time that it did become a reality. And yeah, at that time, it was my first international tour. Jamari van Lochenberg is also was an amazing cricketer. Unfortunately, she stopped playing early in her career due to some injuries that couldn't allow her to continue playing cricket, which is quite sad because she was probably the Jock colours of women's cricket at that time. And she was technically correct. And I remember we were batting in the middle, and there was a time where I was approaching 100, but she was getting closer to 150. And there was not enough balls left for us to do both. And I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, like, hundreds might come more often, but a 150 is special. You're not going to get that quite often. And I remember like how we had to really work hard for her to get to that milestone. So it was really special, and just to enjoy it in the middle. And yeah, it is quite some time ago, so I can't remember all the details, but I do remember it was really good. It was my first international experience traveling abroad, and the Netherlands is quite a unique country, and it was the first time that I was quite wild with everything looks different. They drive on a different side of the road, and their traffic lights is huge and looks different, and you can have chocolate sprinkles for breakfast and the croissant. I mean, who wouldn't want that? So it was really good. I really enjoyed the trip.
I like that those are your takeaways from the Netherlands, the big traffic lights and chocolate sprinkles for breakfast.
Yeah, well, I was quite young. You won't speak about all the other things that you also get to see in the Netherlands.
Maybe for another time. That's a different kind of podcast, I think, when people hear about that. We can all just imagine what goes on in the Netherlands. And so you became South African captain. You mentioned that you felt a bit out of your depth at time, but when you grew into that role, what was it like? And then what was it like to make the decision to step down as captain to be able to focus on your personal game?
Yeah, I think as you grew, and like I said, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. But I think I was probably always better with people. I had really good people management skills, and I like to lead from the front in terms of work ethic and being the first at training, being the one that leaves last. So that was kind of the philosophy, and I wanted to be a role model or an example of what you should be like. And I think the biggest thing at the time of my captaincy was probably there was a big perception still in South Africa back then that women's cricket is a men's sport. So I think for me, the biggest thing was to try and show that you can be a girly girl and you can still compete. So I wanted to just change the perception, and I think I was really good with that. And I really enjoyed probably more the off-field. I'm a good people's person, so I enjoyed having to speak to media or being at sponsors events and stuff, but probably the on-field stuff has taken a lot more toll. And then for me, being such a busy person in nature, it was just always quite hard for me to put Mignon, the cricketer, captain, and the batter separate. So I felt lots of times when I was in the middle batting, I was already thinking as a captain, how are we going to defend this? Who's going to bowl when and where? Which fielder am I going to stand where? So for me, that was quite hard. And then it was a time like I just got married, and you know what, I thought that it did take quite a bit out of me in terms of the captaincy. When you're on tour, there's a lot more meetings and there's a lot of responsibility. And I felt like when Tony comes with me, I want to be able to enjoy some time with him. So it was kind of my batting did struggle a little bit over the captaincy. I was looking at the stats and I could see like my batting is taking a knock. And then also it is a different phase in my life. I just got married. I want to spend more time with family and just enjoy that side too. And it just came to like a mutual agreement that probably the time is better, and that while I can still play and I can still be a leader without a title and I can still contribute in different ways, maybe that was the time for me to step away. And also I felt what the team and probably what the management needed from the team at that, or from the captain at that point. They wanted someone that was a little bit more strict and a bit strong on the girls. And I always felt bad, if I'm not performing, how can I tell somebody else you're not doing your job when I didn't do mine? You know, that was just my personality, where the coaches want somebody that can, even though you're not performing, they'll deal with you, but you needed to work with your team, you know. And it was always hard for me to have the hard conversations, because I want to keep everybody happy. That's not always possible, but I didn't like to hurt anyone. So I feel like, especially in the professional era, you needed somebody that's a little bit tougher than I was at that point. But yeah, it worked out quite well in the end. And like I said, I managed to get spend more time with family, and could also actually just enjoy rocking up to a session, focusing on my batting, and then I could go. I didn't have to be there at the beginning, be there at the end. I could now hand it over to someone else, and just actually enjoy cricket without overthinking it for a bit.
I suppose then, when you were captain, on the flip side of that, you did get series wins in India and Bangladesh, which is amazing, because countries like that, they're not easy to get series wins in there. So talk us a little bit through those two series and the wins.
It was quite special. There's a couple of good things that also came from my captaincy. And I know a lot of people sometimes tell me I shouldn't sell myself short, but it also, I don't want to come out here and just speak about everything that I've done. That also is not the kind of person I am. But yeah, that was quite special. Obviously, the conditions is quite different, but we were quite fortunate that we had a good core group together. And in the beginning, we didn't play enough cricket, but during those times, CSA started seeing the value and started investing more in the women's game, and we started playing a lot more cricket. And as soon as we started playing a lot more cricket and being more competitive, one thing led to the other, and you start being more competitive on the field. Because sometimes if you only have 3 ODIs in the year, if you didn't have a good series, there's no way you can bounce back or come back. We're at least now having a couple of tours a year. You kept on playing, so your mindset, and you just there wasn't that much of off time in between. There was actually more touring consistently, where your skill development takes place a lot quicker, because you only really get tested in the middle. You know, it's easy in the nets. It's easy to when there's no nothing on play. You can't, if you're out, you're not out. You know, in the nets it's easy when you can just play and have fun. But actually in the middle, there's if you're out, unfortunately, you have to walk to the dugout and you don't get a second chance. So I think the more you play, the better it got for us as a team. And we started gelling a lot more, and we started understanding each other and each other's games a lot better.
Yeah, we've all scored hundreds in the nets. But like you say, it is a very different kettle of fish when you get out into the middle. And so obviously you had the ups and downs of life as a captain, and as any cricketer has, there's ups and downs and ins and outs of form. What was it like? What's it like being part of a team that something like the 2017 World Cup, when he was so nearly there to make a final, and to be part of a South African team that just looked like it had everything and never quite made that last step? That must have been really hard.
Yeah, look, for us already for that World Cup, we kind of had a goal for ourselves for the semi-finals, because we've never reached a semi-final in a 50-over World Cup up until that time. So for us, that was already a goal achieved. But I think probably it's almost like, oh wow, we achieved it and now we're here, but then we almost didn't really know how to kick on. And I think that was the biggest difference. Probably England has been in those pressure moments so many times that they just knew how to deal with it better. Where for us, we were quite overwhelmed by the occasion already. But yeah, getting so close. I mean, it was a couple of runs and a couple of balls in the end. And the thing is, I've always said, if you lose by a couple of balls or deliveries, like, it stays with you for a very long time. Because after that, I was thinking, yes, I scored some runs in that final, but if I had hit one extra four, or we stopped one less, or I stopped 1-4, or I had one less dot, or a million things goes through your mind for months afterwards. Where like the last World Cup, yes, it wasn't our best. We made the semi-final. This time around, we actually set a goal of reaching the finals, but then we ended up it was just a really bad day at the office. We didn't even compete, but it was almost easier to get over that, where it's just like 100 runs. Like, there's a lot of things that had to go your way to find those 100 runs. But in 2017, that was really heartbreaking. And I think it took a lot of us a couple of months probably to get over getting so close yet so far. And it was special that England got to win it, and it's in their home, and playing the final at Lords and win, and it was amazing. But to know that we actually got so close was really special. And I think leading up to that, a lot of our girls had started getting more exposure, playing in the global leagues, playing in Big Bash, playing in the Kia Super League. Yes, although it's a different format, but you actually started playing against and with a lot more of these international players. So coming to a World Cup, it wasn't like that where we only got to see these girls once every 4 years, and you're almost in a bit of awe against who you're playing. Now it's like it's a teammate, you've played against them, and it just kind of felt like the playing field was a little bit more level, and our girls actually believe that they deserve to be there. Where in the past we kind of rocked up to a World Cup, but making up numbers, we didn't really go to compete. Where that year was definitely the first year where we said, listen, we actually here and we mean business. And I must say a lot of good things came from that, because after that, that was kind of when CSA really realized, okay, South Africa, they've come far with the limited resources. We have to invest more to make sure that they can keep up with the best. Because and then after that, we started getting a lot more investment in the women's game, and the game started being televised back home. And there was a lot more. The Cricket Association took on the women's players, and there was a lot of good things. They fought for parity when it came to business class flights and staying in single rooms, but in the past it wasn't there. So we then make a lot of progress, and the contracts got better. Like I said, there's still a lot of room for improvement, and can keep on getting better. But I think 2017 was probably the year where things really changed in South Africa, and where women's cricket became more a viable career option.
So then did it sort of fill you with a little bit of happiness and pride when South Africa got a little bit of their own back on England in the last T20 World Cup, and not just that, to do it at home in front of a home crowd? That must have been incredibly pleasing for the South African team.
Yeah, definitely. It was amazing to see them, because obviously leading up to the game, and I was in commentary, and I'll be honest, I honestly thinking the way England was playing, they had that amazing game the game before, and there was a little voice in my head that said they might have played their best game a game too early, and that ended up happening. But sometimes, more often than not, we've been on the wrong side of that. We've performed or peaked too early, and then when we needed the most, we didn't. But it was so good to see how these girls stepped up, and it was really special. And like you mentioned, it was a home ground. We've never seen a full Newlands for women's cricket. I remember when we used to play there, we maybe had a couple of family and friends that came to watch. So it was really special. And the fact that Sia came out, and I think the president sent them the team messages and warm wishes. So it was really a fantastic time. And just to see, and the amount of people, and it was like I say, all shapes and sizes, all ages, male, female, everybody just came to see good cricket. So it was really special. to see the girls play in the final.
Was there any part of you that found it almost difficult to watch? Because it's not that long since you had retired, especially from T20 cricket, and you were in the commentary box. Was it difficult at all to watch that and be like, oh, maybe if I just stayed on a few more months, I could have been in a World Cup final?
Yeah, there's definitely those thoughts that come up. I say I didn't have them, but there's also a lot of other things that came with it. So it's not just playing in the World Cup final, but also before going to the World Cup, I had no idea that we will be playing in a final. So there was also the opposite side to it, to being on the losing side again and going through the pain and the hurt. And I honestly don't think I was ready to go through that again. I mean, losing in the final, it's a little bit different again, because you already made history, because we're the first senior team that ever played in a final. So in itself, that was a little bit of, we've already outperformed and achieved something amazing, and this is again going to change women's cricket for the future. But yeah, there was also the opposite side. You could fall out in the semi-final and go through all the hurt, and there was a lot of noise obviously leading up to the tournament, so we didn't really know how it's going to go. And with the opening game losing in Sri Lanka, I was also like, oh, is this really happening, And it was just so good to see how the girls just changed it around. So yes, I was sad at the time, but also they're still my friends, so they're still part of family. So I was also just happy. So eventually I actually got asked to commentate in the final, and I said, you know what, I actually want to enjoy it as a spectator. I want to go and I watched it with Tony and my parents, and we sat in the box and we could see it and enjoy it as supporters of the women's game. It was good to see, and it was a good final. Although we didn't come up winning, it was competitive, and I think that was the biggest thing. Like again, it could have easily gone the other way, where you play in this final first time and you get overawed by the occasion. But now, because the women's game is just so much more professional, they really stepped up, and they could walk away and they could hold their heads high. So that was really cool. Yeah, maybe a couple of months, but you never know.
And on the topic of your retirement, so initially you retired from the longer formats a few months ahead of the T20 ones. What was it that led to making those decisions and then being like, actually, I'm going to retire from international T20 as well and just stick to franchise stuff?
So when I retired from 50 over cricket, I knew obviously I'm not going to be around for another 4 years playing in another 50 over cricket. So I also felt like the time is right, that there's a lot of youngsters that need to get exposed to playing the longer format and more often. And unfortunately, the CSA came back to me to say that they wouldn't be able to contract me for playing in one format only. So I couldn't be on a contract with CSA for just T20 cricket only. And then I also had to sit and rethink. So I could basically play on a tour-to-tour basis with a daily fee. But all of a sudden, I still have expenses to pay. I had to start paying my own medical aid. I have to start actually need to make a living. And unfortunately, I had to weigh up the options, and being away from home and the fee that they were currently offering at that time, I felt as a professional player, it was, my meal allowance is probably more than what they were willing to pay per day. So I felt like it's quite sad, but it was just at the long term, it was not a mutually beneficial agreement where we're both walking away. I kept on playing because I wanted to play in the Commonwealth Games really badly. I felt like that was a first of its kind, and I wanted to experience it for me. And it wasn't about making money out of it. I just wanted to experience being part of the Commonwealth. And then I was hoping that we could come to agreement maybe with finding a T20 contract on the shorter, just for up until the World Cup at least. But it wasn't part of the reality at that time. And I then had to make the call to actually, you know what, maybe it's time for me to just step away and just play in the franchise leagues. And then it also allows me to be at home a lot more. I don't have to travel as much as I used to, especially with COVID. There was a time where I only saw Tony 3 days in 5 months. And, you know, that's also, it's not ideal. Fortunately, we are high school sweethearts, so he's been there throughout the whole journey. And when I played my first game, he was there rooting, and he was still there when I retired from cricket, and I had his support all the way. But it's also, for me, just it's time to really invest back in our relationship, and the support he's given me. It's also now time to really step up on the wife duties, and we also want to start with a family. So that's also in hopefully part of the near future. We would like to start a family of our own, and unfortunately I can't be running around on the cricket field when I want to do that. So
Mini
I had to-
minions. Minions. It's got such a ring to it. Minions. Oh. And so you touched on being able to play in these franchise tournaments now. You went off and played with Hobart Hurricanes in the WBBL this year. Obviously, I've seen you at FairBreak. You're in the 100. You're all over the place. And what's it been like to see the change in the franchise tournaments, sort of from the inauguration of the WBBL and the growth in the development of the global game for women?
Yeah, it's amazing, but like all things, like we mentioned, now that it's becoming more and more professional, it's also becoming a lot more ruthless. And I mean, looking at the WBL, this draft system and being drafted, and the feelings that we all felt like it was the first time, and it was quite a weird phase, because you don't really know. All of a sudden, you feel that your value is only based on your worth on paper and what they're willing to bid for you, which all of a sudden it goes against everything you believe in, that your self-worth shouldn't be just as a cricket player. But I mean, on that day, it did felt a little bit like that. And then not being picked up in the draft, like new emotions came about, like, oh, am I not good enough anymore? So there's a lot of different factors to it. It's exciting time. And for the girls that really got picked up, it seemed like it was an amazing experience, and they all said it was really good. But then again, I don't think we've been part of playing on that level in India. So they said they were quite busy in terms of sponsorship and having to do like signing sessions and appearances, and it was quite full on. It was very busy. So it's exciting, but it's also all of a sudden you now walk out and there's people that actually knows you and want your attention, and you need to be polite at all times and smile. And I think, like, also then reading in the media when somebody's not doing well. I mean, Smriti Mandana all of a sudden got thrashed because she's not scoring runs. So, she's one of the highest paid players and not performing. And then that part comes to it. So that is still a little bit new for most of us, because in the past it's always been, you kind of they invite you to come and you start building a relationship. And if you gel well with the team, there's a likelihood that you can go back. And all of a sudden, the draft system, it's open for all. So you have your previous relationships doesn't mean a thing when you go onto the draft. So it's a little bit weird and still finding my feet, understanding how it all works. But it's a good experience. I think it's good to realize, like, and then understanding how to price yourself. If you go too high, you might not be picked up. If you go too low, they might think you don't think you're worth it, So I don't know. There's a lot of confusion with that. But yeah, it's awesome to see that there's now basically all year round, there's a global league. There's no more off season. Like, there's literally every month of the year, there's almost a tournament popping up. So it's really exciting. But it's going to be quite busy for the girls in the near future.
Yeah, just on that, with the whole draft system and it being quite stressful, how important, I suppose, or how big a role does your faith play during those stressful times?
Yeah, I think for me, always, like, so I had this motto that my talent is God's gift to me, and what I do with it is my gift back. So at times when you're not performing, you're not getting a contract, you feel, oh wow, I'm not giving a good gift back, But it took me some time to also realize that my self-worth is more, I'm a daughter of the king, like I'm a daughter of the highest king. So for me, it's more about, like, I'm using my God-given talent to glorify his name, but it's not, my self-worth is not linked to the worth on paper or whether I get picked up or not, or I'm so much more than just a cricketer. And I'm also, a wife and a loving daughter and a sister and an aunt, and there's a lot more to me than just Mignon the cricketer. So also at times when things don't work out, I believe that it's for a reason, and that there's either something bigger or better coming my way, or I'm being protected from something. So I do believe that I prayed about the opportunity and I given it to God's hand, and I trust that he would do what's best for my interest. And in the end, I need to trust that that's the reason why I didn't get picked up. And whether it means that there might be opportunities in the future, I don't know yet. But maybe it also gave me other opportunities, whether it's just spending time at home or being here when my husband needed me, or actually we've relocated recently. So it gave me time to really relocate and spend some time at home and just getting settled. So it's all those things. My husband started a new job and I was able to be here with him in the first few months. So there's always a bigger part. We don't always see the big picture, but I do trust that it all works out as it should.
And you use your role now to give back to, obviously you're still playing, but you do give back to the game in a coaching and commentary capacity, as well as being involved with FairBreak.
Yeah.
How did all of that link up? So yeah, you got involved in FairBreak, and you also have your coaching set up. Could you talk us a bit through Mignon du Preez, the coach?
So I started Mignon du Preez Girls Cricket Academy in South Africa, but it is currently a little bit on hold because the head coach that was my personal coach has also got an opportunity to coach internationally, which is awesome. But since I relocated, I'm no longer in Pretoria, so it makes it quite hard. And he was the head coach and he's no longer there. So we've decided to just put it on hold, but maybe taking a different avenue in the future where we'll focus a bit more on weekend clinics, holiday clinics, before and after school, rather than at the moment we struggle to get the girls commitment on a weekly basis just because of all the other school activities, and it's netball and it's hockey and it's athletics, and it's always because the cricket girls are usually the girls that's got good hand-eye coordination. They do a lot of different sports, so it's hard to just get them committed every week. So we just decided that we're going to do it a little bit differently. From other coach, growing up, I never thought that I would want to go into coaching because I always thought I didn't play according to the book. So to teach somebody to do it, it's not ideal. But I did realize, I actually enjoyed, I did a little bit of batting consultancy and got an opportunity with the ICC to mentor and be a batting consultant at the World Cup qualifiers in earlier this year. And I really actually enjoyed being able to give back. And I realized, okay, maybe I've got something to offer. So I've done a lot of mentoring and I've been an ambassador for them. And then same with at FairBreak, this is just something that I've been starting up part-time. As I mentioned earlier, I needed to get a different avenue of making an income since I couldn't play or be on contract with CSA. And that was something that it just linked perfectly. And I actually met Sean a couple of years before the first Big Bash in 2015, before the first Big Bash, I already had conversations when they still were planning a women's international cricket league, and he had conversations with my dad. My dad wanted to get involved. He even had a business card with WICL and his name on it. So they were all trying to get this thing up and running. But like we've mentioned, unfortunately at that time we didn't get the backing of a board. So but I always stayed in contact with Sean. And then when I started thinking about, okay, I need to just start doing post-career planning and look at different options. I've got an honors degree in marketing. So I said, I can offer them a little bit of maybe on a marketing consultancy point of view. I'm also one of the ambassadors. And there's a lot of different things. And currently the FairBreak Foundation launched during the FairBreak Invitational. And that's an opportunity where we can really be part of the social impact side. So I'm looking forward. I'll be doing a lot more work on that side in the future, and really excited about that and being able to make a difference. And as I said, I wanted to be part of the change I want to see in women's cricket. And I think the FairBreak Foundation is just going to be an opportunity to do that. And then still continue, hopefully, to be part in FairBreak Invitational in one way or another, whether it's playing in the near future, but in later times, whether it's being a consultant, a mentor, ambassador, commentator, host, whatever. I would love to continue to be part of the family. It's just amazing. Again, we mentioned before, walking away and you just feel so satisfied. It just reminded me why I started playing cricket in the first place. There was a little girl that fell in love with the sport, and playing at FairBreak, it just reminded me why I started playing. And just to see, it was just a feel good, and people are rooting for each other and want other people to do well. And that's special. You don't see that in a professional era where it's very competitive. And actually, if somebody else is doing well, you might not play the next game. So that's a little bit of the ruthless side that came with the professional era, I suppose. But it was just satisfying to just go out there and play. And finally, winning my first trophy, because I've never been part of I've played in semi-finals, I've played in finals, but I haven't won a trophy in a global league. So it was quite special. And we did come from the bottom. Last year, the Warriors was number 6. This year, we raised the trophy. So it was quite special.
You're literally the epitome of started from the bottom, now we're here, which is
you need to put the song up, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was you guys this year, and to be part of that FairBreak team with something like that, and you've got players from nations that don't necessarily get the same opportunities, it sort of reminds you why you love cricket. And it's quite humbling to sort of be part of. Even in the commentary box, you can watch it, and I hate, sometimes people from the outside talk about it in quite a patronizing way, but like, oh, look at the associate players playing. But actually, there are players who don't have these opportunities, and they're really showing up on a global level and showing just what talent there is out there. And I guess for you, playing alongside them, you get to learn from them as much as you get to show them from your experiences.
Yeah, no, it's amazing because unfortunately, I know Sean hates it. He doesn't like us to speak about associated and members players. So it's more players playing in the top 10 and the West. But unfortunately, we just never got an opportunity to play against any of these countries. And to now actually get to see the quality of cricket that's on display elsewhere in the world. And it's just amazing because there's girls that has just as much skill as any other player, but they never had a platform to showcase it. And that's what FairBreak's done. They've given a platform where girls can really show their talent to the rest of the world. And also they play alongside some of the heroes, and they now self become heroes. I mean, for us, also, like, it was amazing to play among some of these girls, hear their stories and how they've overcome and how they've come as far as they did. So it's, like you mentioned, quite humbling, but also awesome. And it's not anymore members associated. It's just 90 cricketers from 36 countries, and we appreciate each other's skill level, and you all come together for a common cause, and that's just fighting to win the trophy. And that's so good. And again, we chatted about it earlier, how sport unite people. And I've got friends from all walks of life everywhere around the globe that I've met at the FairBreak Invitational, so it's really special.
You're stuck with me now as well. And also, we then got to witness that Hayley Matthews masterclass in the final, which was just phenomenal. It was sort of take cover out on the streets because Hayley is going to hit the ball out of the stands. It was insane. And talking of playing alongside fantastic people, I promise you we won't keep you too much longer, but I wanted to ask what it's like. You've got this sort of core group of South African players who we've all known about for so long, yourself, the likes of Marizan, who we've talked about, Dane, Shabnim Ismail, Ayabonga Kaka. What's it been like to play alongside those names? And yes, they might not have got the silverware perhaps that you would have hoped for, but they really are some of the biggest names in the women's game and some of the most talented players around.
Yeah, and that's what makes it special, is most of those names we've mentioned, we've actually all started together at a young age in the non-professional era, and we really had to start from scratch and kind of worked our way up. And it's just amazing to see how a lot of these girls, that there was a time when Tanae and Kapi actually fought for a place in the playing 11. They couldn't both play, and they couldn't both go on tour, so it was either one of them. And although we know how good they are, a lot of times Kapi was sitting at home because Tanae was a leg spinner and offered something different. And just to see how, although they got knocked down, they used their stumbling blocks as stepping stones, and they just kept going. And when somebody told them they're not good enough, they just find a way back, you know. And it's one of the, like, it's really special. These are the type of girls that you wanted to go with war to. Like, yes, it is quite sad that I do feel like we probably felt that we deserved the trophy for the how far we've come over the couple of years. But I think we can't take away the progress, and again, in women's cricket, that those names will be in the history books, and people will remember them for the amazing cricketers they are. So, and again, like a couple you mentioned it before, she just steps up on the global stage. I mean, in every World Cup, and in the 100 final, in the world, in last year's FairBreak final, in the Big Bash final, she's player of the match. So she steps up in big matches. And the same with Shibi. It was so good to see Aya. This is kind of the first league where Aya has played in a global league, and to see her step up, and also being outside her comfort zone. She's not always that talkative, and to see how loud she's in, and she's actually one of the main leaders in a group, in a team, and a vocal voice. And it's good for us to see that she's enjoying the environment. And then Danae, we all know what the match winner she can be, and she can just change the game. And no, it's I've been really fortunate and blessed that I've had a long career and managed to play against some of the best players, and that they will go down in the history books of being some of the legends of the game in women's cricket in South Africa, and has pioneered the way to professionalize women's cricket in South Africa.
And I know we've talked a lot about franchise cricket, but I wanted to get a quick opinion on you. Obviously, you've played in the 100 now, 2 seasons, and you played for the Manchester Originals and the Trent Rockets. I just wanted to know, what were some of the differences between the two teams?
I don't really know. I don't really have an answer for you. Different colours, I suppose. I played in black and then in yellow. No, I mean, the environment, all in all, both times I had a really good time. I think that was the one thing always, that whenever I came to a global league, they make you feel part of the family straight away. And it's amazing how these environments kind of get the best out of me, because they make you feel valued as a person and what you bring as a person first and then as a cricketer. So at both times it's really hard to compare. And on both occasions, I could just say I had a blast and it was really special. And hopefully in the future there will be more opportunities to continue to be part of something so special. Because the 100 was really unique. Initially, didn't really know what to expect and how we're going to go about it. But the way that they've done it, and the fact that they've really equaled the playing field. It's the men gets treated exactly the same as the women, and the women gets to play at the same venues. And this year, actually playing the men played the curtain raiser and the females played the game after. I mean, those are the things that you really see that the ECB is taking women's cricket really seriously. And at both franchises, it was very similar, where they've both treated us as equal to the men. So that was really good, and I really enjoyed my time.
Well, talking of enjoying your time, I feel like we have kept you for a lot of your day. And like you said, you relocated, you've probably got more interesting things to do. You've already been stuck with me for 3.5 weeks. So you probably need to go and lie down in a dark room after another hour talking again. And then you'll get to see me in America in just a few months' time. Lucky you. And hopefully we'll get to get you in the commentary box again at some point. I'm sure we'll probably have meetings between now and then as well. There's always FairBreak things going on somewhere, but we always like to round off these podcasts with a few sort of quick fire questions, just sort of more fun ones. And I feel like you're perhaps too nice for this one, but one we always like to start with is, what's the favorite sledge you've ever used or heard?
Yeah, I'm not a sledger. I didn't like sledging because I didn't want to be sledged. So I'm sorry that I can't entertain you.
No, I sort of felt that one was coming. I could anticipate that. I can't imagine you sledging someone. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah, I'm more of a being overly supportive and yeah.
Of the other team.
Making little yeah. Yeah, and sledging, because I remember if you had it out, you're going to get it back, and I didn't want to be sledged, so I just kind of kept going. But more, and to be fair, in the women's game also a lot more. I haven't really heard as much. I think it depends on the personality. If you're somebody that's handing it out, you might get it back. But in general, there's a lot more noise supporting each other and being vocal or making little comments, maybe, but more innocent, like a backlift looks funny at all, a feet's not moving, she's stuck at the crease, like planting little seeds of doubt in the batter's mind, but not necessarily having to say something mean.
Yeah, I think English people are just full of like the stupid ones, like things like send those bales to Wales and that kind of thing, which actually doesn't upset anyone. It just sounds stupid. But that's just, and I actually really like the bales to Wales, so it's just me. But Alex, you want to go?
I've never heard it, but you might have been good in the middle if you gave a few sledges.
Oh God, no! But I'd be so loud it would hear me on all stump cams and I'd get in trouble. That's why they put me out in the deep. They're like, shut Georgie up, push her over there.
Another popular one we have is, what is your favourite item at a cricket tea? I understand South Africa perhaps don't have, the standard tea, biscuits, crumpets, that kind of stuff. But perhaps maybe something you have at a braai.
Ooh, I think I have to go for ribs, barbecue ribs. And just in general, at South Africa, we don't really do tea, like you mentioned, but a barbecue every day, you can have barbecue for breakfast. But I think my favorite barbecue piece would be a nice spare rib.
Nice. If you hadn't played cricket, what would you wanted to do?
Initially, I wanted to be a medical rep, because I thought, I don't like blood, but I do like the medical field. So I felt and I got a marketing background, so I felt like it would be a good fit. So that was something that I thought about. And also, I started thinking about being I would have enjoyed being a sports coordinator, working at a school that you can still get school holidays. Because I feel like, fortunately, being an international cricketer, our schedule was a little bit more flexible and you didn't have a 9 to 5. So I'm not sure that I'll be able to opt for a 9 to 5 at the moment. So I needed to find something that's a little bit more flexible. Favorite musician or artist? Not none of the above. Is that an option?
That's me as well.
My husband Tony is a musician in the family. He plays guitar and can sing really well. So he actually sang at our wedding. So he's got that one covered. From an arty point of view, I can only be artistic if I use my cricket. You probably saw some on social media. I've used cricket. They also call it like Cricket Loves Cricket. It's an art machine where you can do a lot of fun and creative stuff, cutting vinyl and making stickers and making cards. But I can't do it from scratch. I need the app to help me and I need the machine to help me, and that's about as arty as I could get.
Nice. Go-to karaoke song?
Ooh, probably Simply the Best.
Oh, nice. Good choice. We haven't had that one. We get a lot of ABBA.
ABBA? Yeah. I feel ABBA, you need a group, you know. If it's a solo, I feel Simply the Best. And then if I'm in a group, I can do a little bit of ABBA.
Nice. And then when you get your little minions, you can do ABBA. Introducing Mignon and the Minions.
Last TV show you binged?
Well, binge. I have to watch multiple episodes. Probably Heartland, but that's been a while ago. But that's also really soft. It's just it's about a horse farm, like a family on a horse ranch. So it's like just a really feel good. There's lots of seasons. I think there's like 13 seasons, so you can just keep watching it, and it's just nice, feel good, relaxing, and enjoy.
And it's getting you ready for America? Going down south?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I have to get the cowboy hat and start working on my dance moves.
Alex is laughing at my accent. Well, it sounds far more feel good than what I'm binging at the moment, which is Married at First Sight Australia. And having been away for 3 weeks, I literally have 3 weeks worth of episodes to catch up on, and it is the soundtrack to my life at the moment. But I feel like we probably have kept you for long enough, and it's been absolutely amazing to chat, and we really, really love chatting. Your career has been phenomenal, been inspiring to watch you, and now to get to call you a friend, a co-worker, a colleague, whatever we are these days. Mignon, it's been absolutely fantastic, and thank you for coming on Women's Cricket Chat. And could you just let our listeners know where they can find you on social media?
Thank you very much, Georgie and Alex, for having me. I really appreciate your time. And MDP Minx22 on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm not a TikToker, unfortunately. And on Facebook, I'm still Mignon du Preez, not Van der Merwe.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Mignon. It's been absolutely fantastic.